The cold fluorescent lights of the grocery store cast a sterile glow over the rows of checkout counters. The rhythmic beeping of cash registers blended into the low hum of customers shuffling through their evening errands. It was just another ordinary night, until it wasn't. Emily clutched her worn-out purse, her fingers trembling as she counted the last of her crumpled bills and loose change. Her heart pounded. She had carefully calculated the cost of her groceries, but inflation had made everything more expensive than she remembered. The total on the screen flashed a few dollars higher than she had anticipated. "I'm so sorry," she mumbled, her voice barely audible over the background noise. "Can I take off the bread and the milk?" The cashier, a young man with soft brown eyes and an unassuming demeanor, hesitated for just a moment. He watched as Emily's little boy, no older than 6, clung to her coat, staring up at the bag of apples she had just removed from the belt. The child's face was a mixture of confusion and quiet disappointment. Then, before Emily could say another word, the cashier did something unexpected. With a swift motion, he pulled out his own wallet and, without making a scene, slid a bill into the register. "It's all covered," he said with a reassuring smile, quickly bagging her groceries before she could protest. Emily's eyes widened. "Oh no, I can't let you." "Don't worry about it," he interrupted gently. "Just take care of yourself and your little one." Overwhelmed by emotion, Emily felt tears welling up, but she blinked them away, managing a weak but grateful smile. She wanted to ask his name, to properly thank him, but something in his expression told her that he didn't want recognition. So, she simply nodded, whispering, "Thank you," before gathering her bags and hurrying out the door. What she didn't realize was that someone else had been watching. A man in an expensive, well-tailored suit sat at a small table near the cafe section of the store. He had seen everything: the hesitation, the struggle, the cashier's quiet act of generosity. He didn't move, didn't speak. Instead, he pulled out a small leather notebook, scribbled something down, and closed it with a thoughtful expression. This was no ordinary night, and Emily had no idea that this simple moment would change her life forever. The cold air hit Emily's face as she stepped out of the grocery store, her arms wrapped tightly around the brown paper bags. She held them close, as if they were more than just groceries, as if they were the fragile remnants of her dignity. Her son, Tommy, trotted beside her, his small hands clinging to her coat. "Mommy, why did we have to put the apples back?" His voice was soft, curious, but there was something else beneath it, something Emily hated hearing in her little boy's tone. Disappointment. She forced a smile, one that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. "We'll get them next time, sweetheart. I promise." But even as she said it, a deep ache settled in her chest. She wasn't sure when next time would come. As they reached her old, beaten-down car, Emily carefully placed the bags in the back seat and climbed in. She took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel tightly before starting the engine. The radio crackled to life, playing a soft tune that reminded her of a time when life was different. A time when she didn't have to choose between rent and food. A time when she wasn't alone. 4 years ago, Emily stood in front of a classroom full of eager young faces, chalk dust on her fingertips, her heart full. She had loved teaching. It wasn't just a job, it was her passion. She had always believed in the power of education, in the way knowledge could change lives. Back then, her life had been stable. She had a home, a loving husband, and dreams of giving Tommy the best childhood possible. But stability was a fragile thing. The downward spiral had started with her husband's betrayal. The late nights, the unanswered phone calls, the growing distance between them, it all led to the inevitable. A divorce that drained not just her bank account, but her spirit. Then came the second blow. The school she worked for faced budget cuts, layoffs. Suddenly, after nearly a decade of pouring her heart into her students, she was out of a job. She had tried everything: substitute teaching, tutoring, even waitressing at a local diner. But the bills kept piling up. And with no family to turn to, every day became a battle for survival. Now, sitting in her car outside the grocery store, Emily let out a shaky breath. She glanced at Tommy through the rearview mirror, his innocent face, his wide, trusting eyes. He was the reason she kept fighting. But she was tired. So tired. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she had no idea that the man inside the store, the one who had been watching her, was about to change everything. Jake stood behind the register, his fingers drumming lightly against the counter as the next customer in line placed their groceries on the belt. His shift was almost over, but his mind was still lingering on the woman who had just left, the one struggling to pay for basic necessities, the one whose eyes held a quiet kind of exhaustion he recognized all too well. He had seen people like her before, parents stretching every dollar, elderly customers carefully selecting only what they could afford, young workers counting their pennies. But something about Emily had struck him deeper than usual. Maybe it was the way she had instinctively shielded her son from the reality of their hardship. Or maybe it was the silent resignation in her posture, the way she had braced herself for embarrassment before he stepped in. What she didn't know, what no one in this store knew, was that Jake was no ordinary cashier. A life in disguise. Most people assumed he was just another college kid working a minimum wage job to get by. He never corrected them. It was easier that way. In reality, Jake had grown up in a world of privilege, private schools, luxury vacations, a life where money was never a question. But unlike his peers, he had always felt out of place in that world. His father, a billionaire businessman, had built an empire from the ground up. He was a self-made man who believed in hard work, discipline, and earning success. And he expected the same from his son, which was why, a year ago, Jake had been given an ultimatum. If he ever wanted to inherit even a fraction of his father's wealth, he had to prove himself. No trust fund, no special treatment. He had to live like an average person, earn his own money, and experience life from the ground up. At first, he thought it would be simple. It wasn't. He learned quickly that minimum wage jobs were exhausting, that rent, bills, and groceries ate away at paychecks faster than he ever imagined. That struggling to get by wasn't just about money. It was about the constant stress, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on you every single day. And in that time, he had seen countless people walk through the store, each with their own burdens. He had helped when he could, covering a few dollars here, letting someone slide on a coupon there. But tonight, with Emily, something felt different. Maybe because, for the first time, it wasn't just about helping. It was about understanding. As Jake finished ringing up the next customer, he felt a prickle at the back of his neck, like someone was watching him. He glanced up. Near the cafe section of the store, an older man in an expensive suit sat with a cup of coffee in front of him. He wasn't looking at Jake directly, but there was something purposeful in his posture, something too still. Jake frowned, a strange unease creeping into his chest. Who was this man? And why did he seem so interested in what had just happened? He shook off the feeling and returned to his work, unaware that this encounter was about to change his life forever. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as the man in the cafe section took another measured sip from his cup. He was in no hurry. His eyes, sharp and calculating, lingered on the young cashier as he worked through the line of customers. His name was Richard Langford. To the outside world, he was a billionaire investor, a man who had built an empire with nothing but grit and an unshakable belief in his own vision. His name graced the covers of financial magazines, His decisions shaped industries, and his fortune could buy anything, except for one thing he valued most: character. That was something money couldn't manufacture, and that was why he was here. The test no one knew about. Richard had been following Jake's journey for over a year now, though his son had no idea. He had watched him struggle, seen him experience real hardship for the first time in his life. It was a necessary test, one that Jake needed more than he realized. Richard had built his own wealth from nothing. He knew what it meant to fight for survival, to claw your way up from the bottom. But his son had never known that struggle. How could he expect Jake to one day take over his empire if he didn't even understand the world outside their insulated life of privilege? That was why Richard had stripped everything away. No trust fund, no cushy jobs, no safety nets. If Jake was ever going to be worthy of his legacy, he had to prove that he could survive on his own. But what Richard had seen tonight surprised him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. Jake wasn't just scraping by. He was showing something far greater than resilience. He had stepped up for someone else. He had seen a woman in need and acted, not for recognition, but simply because it was the right thing to do. That was different. That was unexpected. And Richard didn't believe in coincidences. Richard shifted his gaze to the store entrance, where Emily had just left with her son. He had noticed her struggle the moment she stepped into the checkout line. The careful way she picked each item, the hesitation before reaching for her wallet. He had seen that look before. It was the look of someone who had known better days. Someone who had fought hard, only to be beaten down by life. He had been planning to leave after observing Jake, but now, Emily intrigued him just as much. Pulling out his phone, he made a quick call. "I need a background check. Her name is Emily Parker." There was a pause on the other end before his assistant responded. "What exactly are you looking for?" Richard's eyes remained locked on the exit door, his mind already spinning through possibilities. Everything. Emily's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she pulled into the small parking lot of her apartment complex. The car's engine sputtered before shutting off, and for a moment, she just sat there, staring at the worn dashboard, her mind still replaying what had happened at the grocery store. That young cashier, why had he helped her? People didn't just do things like that. Not anymore. A quiet sigh escaped her lips. "Mommy." Tommy's small voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to face him, forcing a warm smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Can we eat now?" His eyes were hopeful, and Emily felt a pang of guilt. Of course. She reached back to grab the grocery bags, determined to shake off the weight pressing down on her chest. Tonight, she wouldn't let her worries steal this moment. Later that evening, after Tommy had eaten and fallen asleep, Emily sat at the tiny kitchen table, absent-mindedly running her fingers over the rim of her coffee cup. She was exhausted, but sleep felt impossible. Her phone buzzed. Frowning, she picked it up. An unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello, Ms. Parker." A woman's voice, professional and polite. "My name is Claire Donovan. I work for Langford Enterprises." Emily sat up straighter, confusion tightening her grip on the phone. "I'm sorry, who?" "Langford Enterprises. Mr. Richard Langford would like to meet with you." Emily blinked. The name was vaguely familiar. Wasn't Langford some billionaire? But why would someone like that want to meet her? There must be some mistake," she said, shaking her head. "I don't know Mr. Langford." There was a brief pause on the other end. "He knows about you, Ms. Parker, and he believes you may be the perfect candidate for a special opportunity." A strange chill ran down Emily's spine. What kind of opportunity? He would like to explain in person. "If you're available tomorrow morning, we can send a car to pick you up." This didn't make sense. She was just a struggling single mother. Why would a billionaire take an interest in her? She should say no. She should hang up and forget about it. But something inside her whispered otherwise. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a breath. "I'll be ready." As she ended the call, she sat in silence, staring at her reflection in the dark kitchen window. What had she just agreed to? Jake tossed his apron into the locker, rolling his shoulders to shake off the stiffness of a long shift. The grocery store was quiet now, the last few customers trickling out as closing time approached. But his mind wasn't on work anymore. It was on her. The woman from earlier, Emily. Her tired eyes, the way she had hesitated before asking to remove groceries from her total. He had seen people struggle before, but something about her had stuck with him. Maybe because, deep down, he knew what it was like to feel powerless. Most of his co-workers thought he was just another broke 20-something trying to make ends meet. And in some ways, he was. But in ways they could never imagine, he wasn't. Jake Langford wasn't supposed to be here. He was the only son of Richard Langford, one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. His childhood had been spent in penthouses, private jets, and boardrooms filled with people who spoke in numbers instead of emotions. His father had built an empire from the ground up, and one day, he was supposed to take over. Except Jake had never wanted that life. He hated the world of high society, the endless wealth that disconnected people from reality. He had grown up seeing how money could buy everything, except sincerity, and that was why his father had sent him here. This wasn't a punishment. It was a test. If he wanted any part of the Langford fortune, he had to prove he was worthy of it. No trust funds, no shortcuts, just hard work, just like his father had once done. At first, he resented it. But over time, something changed. He learned. He saw life from the ground level. He understood the weight of a minimum wage paycheck, the exhaustion of a double shift, the quiet desperation in customers' eyes when they counted their last few bills. And tonight, for the first time, he had seen his own father watching him. Jake didn't know what to make of that. His phone buzzed in his pocket. When he saw the name on the screen, his stomach tightened. "Dad." He hesitated before answering. "Yeah, you did well today." Jake froze. His father never called to offer praise. "You were there. I saw everything." A pause. "We'll talk soon." The line went dead. Jake stared at the phone, unease creeping up his spine. Something was happening, and for the first time, he wasn't sure he was ready for it. The black sedan pulled up to the curb in front of Emily's apartment complex right on time. She hesitated before stepping outside, gripping her worn-out purse tightly. The morning air was crisp, carrying a stillness that made this moment feel even more surreal. She had barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities. What could a billionaire like Richard Langford possibly want with her? Was this some kind of scam? A cruel joke? But something inside her told her to go. She climbed into the car, the leather seats far too luxurious for someone like her. The driver didn't speak. He simply nodded and pulled away from the curb, merging onto the highway. Emily pressed her hands together, trying to steady her nerves. 20 minutes later, the car pulled through towering iron gates, past a long, winding driveway lined with perfectly trimmed hedges. The estate that came into view was unlike anything Emily had ever seen. An architectural masterpiece, with massive glass windows reflecting the golden morning light. She swallowed hard. This was a world she had only ever glimpsed on television, one she never imagined stepping into. The driver opened her door, and she stepped out cautiously. A woman in a sleek business suit was already waiting for her at the entrance. "Ms. Parker." The woman smiled warmly. "I'm Claire Donovan. Mr. Langford is expecting you." Emily nodded, her throat dry as she followed Claire through the grand foyer. Every step she took echoed against the polished marble floors. The sheer size of the place made her feel impossibly small. Claire led her down a long hallway before stopping in front of an open office. "He's inside," she said, gesturing for Emily to enter. Richard Langford sat behind a massive wooden desk, his piercing gaze studying her the moment she stepped in. He was older than she had expected, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed back, his suit crisp, his presence commanding. "Ms. Parker." His voice was steady, unreadable. "Please have a seat." Emily lowered herself onto the chair across from him, feeling painfully out of place. I don't understand why I'm here." Richard leaned back, steepling his fingers. "I saw what happened last night at the grocery store." Her heart stuttered. "You saw?" He nodded. "I watched how you struggled to pay for your groceries. I saw the way you put back necessities just to make ends meet. And I saw someone step in to help you." Emily swallowed, her stomach twisting in humiliation. "If this is some kind of charity." "It's not," he cut in firmly. "It's an opportunity." She frowned. "What kind of opportunity?" Richard studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "I need someone with resilience. Someone who understands struggle. Someone who won't take shortcuts. And I believe you might be that person." Emily shook her head, confused. "For what?" Richard's lips curved slightly, but his eyes remained unreadable. "I want to offer you a job." Emily blinked, certain she had misheard. "A job?" she repeated. Richard Langford, billionaire businessman, nodded. "Yes." She shifted in her seat, suddenly wary. "I don't understand. You don't know me. Why would you offer me a job?" Richard tapped his fingers against the desk, studying her. "Because I believe in finding people with grit. Qualifications can be taught. Experience can be gained. But resilience, the ability to keep pushing forward despite the odds, that can't be faked." Emily stiffened. She didn't know whether to feel flattered or insulted. Was he offering her a job because he saw potential in her, or because he pitied her? "What kind of job?" she asked, her voice cautious. Richard's expression remained unreadable. "An executive assistant position at Langford Enterprises." Emily's breath caught. That was a job that people fought for, something that could change her life overnight. But it didn't make sense. I'm not qualified for something like that," she admitted. "I was a teacher, not a businesswoman." Richard didn't look fazed. "And yet, you survived when the world threw every challenge at you. That tells me more about your ability to handle pressure than any degree ever could." Emily's hands clenched together. It was tempting. So tempting. A stable job. A real income. A future for Tommy. But then reality hit her. "What's the catch?" she asked quietly. A flicker of amusement crossed Richard's face. "Smart question." He leaned forward slightly, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. "The job is real. The salary is real. But there is one condition." Emily braced herself. "Which is, you'll be working directly under my son." She frowned. "Your son?" Richard nodded. "His name is Jake Langford." The room suddenly felt smaller. Emily's mind reeled, searching for the name, until it hit her. Jake, the cashier from the grocery store. Her stomach flipped. "Wait, your son is the young man who helped you last night?" "Yes." Emily's pulse quickened. Nothing about this made sense. "You want me to work for him?" "Yes," Richard confirmed. "Because whether he realizes it or not, he needs to learn just as much as you do." Emily exhaled sharply, trying to process everything. A billionaire had watched her struggle. His son, a man pretending to be just another grocery store worker, had helped her. And now, she was being offered a job that could change her entire future. It was too much. Too fast. She had a choice to make. And deep down, she knew that walking away from this opportunity might be the biggest mistake of her life. Jake paced back and forth in his small apartment, running a hand through his hair. His father's phone call from the night before still echoed in his mind. "You did well today. We'll talk soon." That alone was strange enough. Richard Langford was not the kind of man to hand out compliments easily. If he had been watching, if he had noticed what Jake had done, it meant something was coming. And Jake had a sinking feeling he wasn't going to like it. A sharp knock at his door made him freeze. He wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, he pulled the door open, only to find Claire Donovan, his father's trusted assistant, standing there with her usual poised expression. "Good morning, Jake." His stomach twisted. If Claire was here, that meant his father wasn't playing games. "What do you want?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. She handed him a sleek folder. "Your father has hired a new executive assistant for you." Jake frowned, flipping open the folder. His eyes scanned the name inside. And then, suddenly, his heart stopped. Emily Parker. He stared at the name, his mind racing. No way. Claire remained perfectly calm. "It's already done. She starts tomorrow." Jake snapped the folder shut. "You're kidding, right? She doesn't even know who I am." "Not yet." He let out a frustrated breath. "Why her?" Claire's expression softened just slightly. "Because your father believes she's exactly the kind of person you need to learn from." Jake clenched his jaw. This wasn't just about Emily. This was his father's way of pushing him further, of forcing him to confront his own privilege. But worst of all, Emily had no idea what she was walking into. And Jake wasn't sure if she'd ever forgive him when she found out the truth. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears as she stood frozen in Jake's office. The air between them felt thick with unspoken words, with the weight of a truth she hadn't been prepared for. "You?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Jake exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, I didn't expect you to actually take the job." Emily's fingers curled into fists. "Then why was I offered it?" Jake hesitated, then sighed. "Because my father thinks you're exactly the kind of person I need to learn from." Emily's chest tightened. "Learn from?" Jake met her gaze, his blue eyes conflicted. "He's been testing me, Emily, for over a year. He made me give up everything and live like a regular person, to understand what life is really like for people who don't have a safety net. And he's been watching me this whole time." Emily's breath caught. "And me? Was I just part of the test?" Jake's expression turned pained. "No, you weren't supposed to be. But then I saw you at the store. And he shook his head. "I didn't do that for my father. I did it because I wanted to." Emily's emotions tangled together. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. "So what now? Am I supposed to just go along with this?" Jake took a step closer, sincerity written all over his face. "I don't want you to do anything you don't want to. But if you stay, I promise you, this isn't a game to me. I don't want to be the guy who grew up in a bubble, clueless about the real world. And I don't want to be the kind of person who only helps when someone's watching. I want to be better. I need to be better." Emily studied him. His words felt real. His expression was raw. For the first time, she saw not just the billionaire's son, but the man beneath it all. She let out a slow breath. "I don't trust your father." Jake let out a dry chuckle. "Yeah, me neither." Silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, Emily nodded. "I'll stay," she said, voice steady. "But not for him. And not for you, either." She lifted her chin. "I'm staying because I earned this. Because I deserve a chance at a better life. And if you really want to learn, then you'd better be ready to work as hard as the rest of us." Jake's lips twitched into a small smile. "I wouldn't expect anything less." For the first time in a long time, Emily felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope. Not because someone had handed her a lifeline, but because she was ready to fight for the life she and Tommy deserved. And this time, she wasn't fighting alone.